But enough of Michigan. We got some ACC football talk to do right now with our guy, TJ Pittinger. He is a legend, all right? And he is a legend for this instance alone. He is the first one to treat us like we ought to be treated around here, boys, a national show, okay? And he did it in a way that I didn't necessarily love. All right, he took our prediction, or you guys' prediction, of Duke, I believe it was, beating Florida State, or who was it?
I think it was his prediction.
It was LSU over Florida State, I
Okay,
believe.
your prediction of LSU over Florida State, and put it on his Loud Wrongs segment over there on YouTube, which I think was a banger of an episode over there on his YouTube channel that you guys should subscribe to if you're looking for any Florida State information. He is TJ Pittinger. TJ, appreciate you for joining us tonight, brother.
Man, I forgot about that. It feels like the season's, you get in the grind of the weeks and you're like, oh yeah, we played LSU this year. But yeah, that one did really well. So I appreciate you guys for taking them. So yeah, it worked out well for us.
Yeah, anytime. We'll be punching bags. You know what? I do want to give you shit on this because we were one of the few networks, at least me, national analysts, to come out and say, hey, Florida State making the college football playoff this year. That was my take in August. Yeah. I don't see no clips from TJ Pittinger out here going loud right on Brooksy.
Yeah, we got to make it first. Hey,
you got to make it first. No, but I appreciate you for joining us tonight. We want to talk a little ACC with you, but I first want to play a little game with you. Now, I didn't prepare you for this, TJ, but you've been fighting the good fight on social media all year long defending them Seminoles. So I'm going to ask you, here's how we're going to do this. We are going to play the side of Florida State is fraudulent, okay, because every national talking head show that's outside of Danny Cannell is out here saying Florida State's a bunch of frauds. So we're going to play that role today. I want you to fight the good fight and tell us why we're wrong. First things first, we're going to slap you right over the head with the stats. My boy Jay Will, tell us, give it to us. You gave it to us a couple weeks ago. Just how mediocre is Florida State across the board right now?
So I will go ahead and say this. The ones that I read like 2 weeks ago, there has been some dramatic changes in those where FSU has improved. But these are the questions that I have statistically for Florida State. And it stems off of the offenses that they played and the defenses that they played. Starting with the defenses that they played, LSU's 80th, Southern Miss is 132nd, Boston College is 105th, Clemson is 39th, Virginia Tech 65th, Syracuse 46th, Duke 5th. Then going on to the offensive front.
How many Power 5 football teams are there? There's 133 Division I teams?
Something around
133,
there.
and they played somebody that was 132 in defense.
Yeah, I think they were second to last.
Not bad. What else we got?
On the offensive front, these are the offenses that they played. LSU, of course, top of the nation right now in points scored, which is the most. But the next thing is Clemson is the next best offensive team that they played this year, and they're 50th in points per game in the nation. Everybody else below Clemson. And then the last one.
Hold on. Let's stop right there. TJ, the court presents evidence A. You've played nobody, and the teams that you have played are bad. What say you, TJ?
They're doing what they should do against bad teams. And, I can't redo Florida State's first 7 opponents to give everybody a top 10 offense. But in those games that you mentioned, the defense gave up a net 6 points against Southern Miss. They gave up 19 points against Boston College. That's the stinker. I'll give you that one. They gave up a net 17 points against Clemson, 10 points last week against Duke. The pick 6 is a touchdown that they gave up. 3 points against Syracuse. They gave up 10 points against Virginia Tech. So, yeah, those offenses stink, but Florida State's done what you're supposed to do against bad offenses, and they've held them down. Michigan gets a ton of credit, not for cheating, but for beating the heck out of bad teams right now, which is what they're doing. Yeah. Florida State's defense has played bad offenses, but it's like they've been getting scored on against those offenses.
That's a solid point from Team FSU over there from TJ Pittinger. I got one for you, TJ. One of your best wins this past weekend against a really scrappy Dookie team. I mean, damn, y'all are in a tie football game. In that ball game at halftime, Riley Leonard goes out. It's the only reason I was told that you won that football game, man.
Riley Leonard had a nice 69 yards when he went out of that game. So it's hard for me to think that Riley Leonard is the reason they lost. Florida State went on a 21-0 run in the fourth quarter. I think they rely a lot on their depth, and they're okay wearing teams down because they know that they're a lot deeper than everyone else that they'll play, especially from here on out. in the regular season, the ACC championship. And so they're fine being in close games going to the fourth quarter. Riley Leonard wasn't going to stop Florida State from scoring every time they had the ball in the fourth quarter, which they did. So had Leonard been in there and maybe been able to put up a few more points, maybe that game's a little closer. But again, I don't know that his 69 yards were really moving the needle that much anyway. Duke scored 10 points with Riley Leonard in. They got 7 points off of a pick six, a tipped pass. So I don't know. I don't know if Riley Leonard, maybe we don't win by 18, but I don't think they're winning that game either.
Boys, I think we got a worthy opponent here, Mr. Pittinger. No, he's schooling us right now. What do you got?
So I guess mine's not as much of a criticism as it is a question. What about this team makes you think that they'll be able to win if you go against a team that can lock up your receivers? Because I feel like a lot of times you get in third down situations.
They are kind of one-dimensional.
Kind of just throw it up to Johnny Wilson or whoever else can make a catch. Keon Coleman. What happens, like in the Clemson game, you saw that where sometimes
Duke
they cover
as well
those.
at times.
Yeah, so my question is, like, what about it other than if you find a team that can do that, how are you going to win games?
So I don't know, and this is no shot at UGA because I think they'll probably have the best chance of doing that, of anyone in the country. But I don't know that anybody's just going to shut down Florida State's wide receivers. I don't know that you shut down 6'7" and Keon Coleman, who may be wide receiver 2 right now in the country. I don't know that you shut that down. So what do you do if you run into a team that can limit that or – there are some teams out there that could probably do a much better job than others. But Clemson did play it really, really, really well. And as much as we'll give Clemson's offense crap, I mean, that's still a top 10 defense on the road in Death Valley. And Florida State still found a way to move the ball enough to win, right? Enough to, get to overtime and find a way. So, first of all, who is that defense that's really going to be able to shut it down? Again, I don't know that it exists. There are teams that are better than Clemson defensively that can certainly limit it more. But Florida State's still going to throw up jump balls to 6'7" and 6'4" and say, you might limit it, but you're not going to stop it completely.
He is right in the sense that I think the best, the most NFL-worthy corner that they've played all year, they will play all year, they've already played in Nate Wiggins. Would you agree, TJ?
Yeah, I think so. And he got hurt late, and that kind of made things a little bit easier for Florida State in overtime and late in the game.
Just hurting his own cause here in the court of law.
I was mopping it up the floor, so I wanted to give you guys a little help.
Dude, I like this segment. We've never done anything like this. Just invite an expert on and just try to shit on his football team.
Yeah, I like it too, man. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm going to start doing it to other people.
Do we have any more?
No.
We got to have something. All right, I got one for you. I don't question Jordan Travis's ability to be elite from a college football quarterback standpoint. I think he's a really, really good college quarterback. Adds into the run game, adds a little bit of spice and creativity to what Norvell does as an offense in that run game. Obviously, his deep ball accuracy has improved throughout his career. However, I do think he is limited from a top-end ceiling standpoint as a quarterback. If we were to just mark him up with some of the physical football players that he might have to go up against maybe in January, for example, like a J.J. McCarthy, I don't think he's as physically gifted as a McCarthy. Even like a Carson Beck, I don't think he's as NFL traitsy as a potential quarterback like Carson Beck that he might see down the road. And then just the overall passing attack that a team like Ohio State can bring at you, I don't think necessarily Jordan Travis presents that type of threat. What say you about the idea that, hey, maybe Jordan Travis has a stinker somewhere down the road, TJ?
Yeah, I think if anybody gets into the playoff or, their conference championship, so like your last 3 games of the year and has a stinker, then, you're in pretty big trouble, right? And so, Jordan Travis probably isn't as physically imposing as some of those guys you've mentioned, but I really, really like the weapons that are around him. And again, Johnny Wilson, Keon Coleman, Jaheim Bell, the running attack. I also really, really like Mike Norvell's ability to scheme. And I think he consistently puts guys in the right position to be in games that they shouldn't be in. I don't think Brian Kelly's an elite coach. I think he's a very good coach, but I think he's outcoached a team that's more talented than Florida State 3 straight years in beating LSU twice. And then as a double-digit underdog, taking Notre Dame in 2021 to overtime. And I think that's what Norvell's that's what he excels at. And so I think the coaching side of things, him being an offensive guy, putting guys in the right position, really has a lot to do with where Florida State's success is. And it really is that, you're so cliche saying it, but it really is that team aspect, that team mentality where it's not all on Jordan's shoulders. There's a lot around him that makes Florida State pretty successful offensively.
This is actually helping your case here, but looking at them giving up 24 total points to LSU to start the season, knowing what we know about that offense, but most importantly, They only gave up 7 points in the second half as a whole. That performance against that LSU defense. Now, historically, Brian Kelly football teams offensively had kind of started slow, but they had no excuses. They had a bunch of returning weapons at the wide receiver position, a veteran quarterback coming back, and Jaden Daniels, and that Florida State unit put him in a box. Hey, TJ, what did they do to limit LSU that other teams just haven't been able to do? Because I think now, with Washington having struggled last week, I think LSU has the argument for the best offense in the sport. So what did Florida State do, just aside from the jokes in the courtroom? I think you won the battle. I think, are we conceding here, boys?
Yeah.
Oh, no. I got 2 more for you. I got 2 bullets in the gun. But let's ask about this. What did you guys do to successfully limit that LSU offense that's been unstoppable this year?
I think they played bend, don't break, right? And they really bowed up. LSU could have had 2 more touchdowns. And if they go to the half with a 14 or 17-point lead or even 13, maybe that looks different down the stretch. But they were not afraid to let LSU kind of nickel and dime down the field. And then when they got into the red zone, they got into the scoring zone, they really did a good job of bowing up. In the second half, the defensive line got after it. And again, I think that's where the depth got into it. And Florida State made the right plays at the right time, whether it was an interception or Jared Verse going off for a sack or this, that, and the other. They did a really good job with depth in the second half. First half, I think they were willing to let LSU drive and say that, hey, you're not going to get all the way into the end zone. So they forced a couple of fourth down misses. They forced a field goal, kept it close for a half, and then kind of let their depth take over. They rotate a ton on the defensive line, and that helped too.
All right, we got 2 final bullets in the chamber. If we can't get you here, we ain't getting you. What do you got?
My question just kind of goes all around the schedule because LSU is probably the closest thing that Florida State has played to a college football playoff opponent, at least from an offensive standpoint. Duke, great football team, not necessarily there offensively. And then I just look at the rest of the schedule, Wake Forest, Pittsburgh, Miami, which look great to start with, maybe not so much now, North Alabama, and then Florida. Is there maybe this concern that because the schedule has been up to par, that maybe they kind of just go through the schedule, but then when it comes up to college football playoff, like maybe the ends don't meet finally. Maybe they find someone that can beat them offensively or defensively, because this is something that we have seen from the ACC do and even other opponents in college football where they have maybe this subpar schedule and they look fantastic doing so. They're still winning football games, but then when it comes to crunch time, the college football playoff, they necessarily don't deliver what everybody thought they would.
Yeah, I think so, but I don't think there's because your schedule was poor, you are automatically at a disadvantage for that. I'm going back 10 years on you now, but that was the talking point when 2013 and Jameis Winston got to play Auburn in the national championship. Well, Auburn's battle tested, and they've been through this team, and they've been through that. And who has Florida State played all year? And that was a good game. I mean, don't get me wrong, but it was Florida State when the pedal met the rubber, right? Like whatever cliche you want to use, that's not even a good one. They were there and they were ready to go. So I don't think having a bad schedule necessarily, precludes you from finding a way to win. But you are right. And at the end of the day, Florida State's offenses that they've played aren't very good. I mean, there's a chance they'd see North Carolina. I think Miami's offense has some pretty potent weapons. I just don't think they're a full offense just yet. But they look good at times. So if Van Dyke's healthy, that'll be one that you kind of, don't want to see a ton out of. You'd like to see them kind of stay down. But if they played UNC, I think in Charlotte, that would certainly get them ready. And if UNC wins out, they're into Charlotte. So we'll see on that one. But, yeah, I don't think getting there and who they've played in the past is really – I don't know. It means way less than the matchups once that game or playoff happens.
You left out that 2014 season when talking about kind of teams that didn't matter, that you didn't really play anymore.
Which brings me to my final point.
Wait, can I do that one? Can I answer that 2014?
No, because you're about to have to answer for the whole conference. That ACC be serving up some mid, TJ. Every year we got a letdown in the daggum college football playoff. And you know who the culprits are? The Pac-12. I'm looking at you, Washington, okay, and the ACC. And I'm looking at you, Notre Dame, who might as well be your ugly step-cousin out there at the ACC. So if it ain't Deshaun Watson walking through that door, and if it ain't Trevor Lawrence walking through that door, this conference serves us up some mid, TJ Pittinger.
Who doesn't, though, outside of the SEC? Ohio State's gotten blown out 31-0. The Big 12 is never good. They had the one good game against Georgia. Yeah, so I'll give them that. Nobody is consistent in the playoff, though. And I'll dare to say that the team that's been the most consistent in the playoff is actually Clemson. And then Ohio State's probably right behind them. So, yeah, the ACC in general is mid, but so is everyone else. The Pac-12 is undoubtedly the worst, then the Big 12, then it's a fight between, who's worse between the ACC and Big 10. And so the Big 10 usually has two good teams going back and forth, but I don't know, half of that's got a shadow cast on it now with Michigan. So who even knows with last year? So I don't know. I think that, yeah, the ACC's not been good, but has anybody outside of the SEC once it gets playoff time?
No. Georgia's 5-1.
Yeah, Georgia and Alabama. Bama lost.
Georgia, Alabama, and Clemson are probably the only teams with a winning record in the college football playoff.
Probably.
LSU.
LSU, good call.
Yeah.
Been in there once and swept it. So, yeah, LSU with an undefeated record in the college football playoff. Probably the only ones with that,
Yeah.
right? Only ones in the college football playoff with the undefeated record. All right, the other question I got for you, TJ, is what are the odds that Florida State falls victim to something that the ACC's felt victim to the last 2 weeks? Pitt sneaks up on Louisville 2 weeks ago. UNC takes an L to Virginia last week at home. And then this week, you guys are on the road. Ugly Winston-Salem noon kicker. What are the odds that Florida State just doesn't show up this weekend?
I think pretty low. Yeah. I think that, Wake's trying to I think they're second string quarterback. So like they played three quarterbacks in the last 2 weeks, ton of injuries. They're just not the same team. Obviously losing Hartman was big, but they also lost like 10 or 12 like super COVID seniors or whatever. And so they're just not the same team. It took a miracle where Pitt slid early for them to not beat Pitt. And Pitt's terrible too. So I think it would really, Florida State could, I think, play like a C+ game and probably still win this thing by 10 points, 14 points. They're just so physically imposing on both sides of the line of scrimmage compared to Pitt. I don't think Florida State has an elite offensive line compared to college football, but compared to what compared to what Wake has, I just don't think they have enough to stay in it. So we'll see. I could see them tripping up against Miami or Florida because of the rivalry. I'd be pretty shocked if they slipped up here to Wake or even Pitt next weekend.
I think Jay Will's going to make one more run at you. What do you got, Jay Will?
Oh, no, I wasn't going to make a run at you. I was just going to ask a question because Kirk Herbstreit made this tweet this week about Wake Forest, kind of saying it's like a sleepy environment. They're a good football team, contrary to belief, and that they're typically this team that can sneak up on people. Is that your belief, too, as someone that is in the ACC and commonly sees Wake Forest?
Wake Forest is on a 3-game winning streak against Florida State right now, so maybe I shouldn't talk so much smack. But again, they did that with Sam Hartman. They've done that when Florida State's been really down, right? And so I guess I kind of see what he's saying about like the sleepy nooner and stuff, but man, as a 21-point road favorite, I'm not saying they definitely cover the spread or they're my lock of the week or anything like that, but they are so much more talented than Wake is this year. Even last year, Wake had some beasts out at wide receiver. Sam Hartman, a really good defense. They run that annoying mesh that nobody likes. Yeah. So I think they're also very well coached. I think Clawson's a great coach. And, if Wake can find a little bit more success, he'll probably get snatched up from somebody. So I think they're just such a bad team this year. And so that's kind of what I hate to sound so cocky with it, but Florida State also had their like crap game against BC and nearly lost. And I think that was their wake up call, right? Like you kind of get your one like, oh man, all right, let's not do this again. It was a nooner. You got to realize it going out this week, that similar type situation. How do you compensate for it? How do you get better? So yeah, I saw Kirk's comments. The last time they put, again, I'll go back 10 years ago because that's the trendy thing to do with this year's team. But they put Florida State on upset alert on College Game Day against Maryland in 2013, and the Seminoles won 63-0. So I'm not saying that happens, but like whenever Kirk puts us on upset alert, the fans are super happy with that.
TJ, one question I got for you, and it's not just relative to Florida State football. I think it's relative to this sport as a whole. It was very, very important that Florida State's boosters, administration, and particularly fan base remain patient with Mike Norvell. Okay, I don't know what he did to earn it, but it's a good thing that he got it because it took a while. It wasn't this immediate success. I think he's going to be one of the football coaches that defies our year 3 principle here on this network. It's year 4 for him, is it not, at Florida State?
No.
So this is a guy that is kind of defying what we normally think of in terms of college football where, if you're not making or winning your conference in year 3, it's probably not going to be there. Luckily, he showed signs of it. But I guess what was the key to the patience of the fan base, and was it always patient? Because I'm going to believe it wasn't.
Yeah, it was tough. Well, coming off of Taggart, then you come off of Willie Taggart, and then you go into the COVID year. And I think the COVID year bought him a little bit extra time. And everyone had to deal with COVID, but not everyone had to take over like a top 15-ish all-time program that had just been run into the dirt while COVID was going on. And so he didn't get to meet with his players until like 3 months into the job. He did, it was like he didn't get to recruit on campus for like 6 months into the job. So like, I don't know. I think that bought him a little time. And they obviously started out really poorly. They went 3-10 in his first 13 games. But then they started to see signs of improvement. And that was the biggest thing with Taggart was things were declining and getting worse and worse and worse. And just like Florida, right? Like Florida's seeing some signs of improvement, not holistically, not all the way across the board, but like there are some reasons for optimism or hope with where Napier is. I mean, right now 5-2. I mean, shoot, they should be thrilled with that. Their over under in Vegas was 5.5. So Florida State went 5-3 down the stretch of that year too. And those 3 losses, they were underdogs in all 3 of the games, 2 of them by double digits. And they competed in each one of them. They barely lost to Clemson. They barely lost on the road at Florida. Not that they were a great team, but they did a good job, and there were reasons for optimism. And then I think going into year 3, that was the big question year, and they beat LSU. They beat LSU to start the year, and everyone said, oh, okay, well, we might have something here. If we can beat LSU, we can beat anybody else on the schedule. And that end of year 2, beginning of year 3 really is what kind of turned everyone's minds around. And they were like, hey, wait a minute. We might have a guy that knows what he's doing here.
All right, so NIL is legal, so I can ask you this question without feeling like I'm throwing any allegations on the program. As a person who's been around college football forever, Florida State was always a football school that was nationally known, right, historically great. But people who knew football knew that what Bobby Bowden did there was not only transcendent, but was a first and one of a kind, because historically that was not a football school. That was not a football or a university that invested a lot of money into athletics. And even during Jimbo's time, most of the reason in bitching and moaning and complaining that he did was because resources weren't there, facilities weren't great. This arms race, they weren't able to compete for. Now, I'm a director of recruiting for SI and Fan Nation, so I'm very well versed in recruiting. And I'm going to tell you right now, since NIL has been enacted, there's a ball player down there in Florida State and Tallahassee that's out here playing ball and playing ball actively. So where did this money come from, TJ? Because it's here now, if I'm not mistaken. It is here on the recruiting trail. Florida State is a player.
Yeah, I was chatting with somebody about this. I think that Florida State has always done more with less, and they've always had to be strategic. They started football like 50 years after the University of Florida, and they have the same number of national championships, the same number of Heismans. Since Bowden got there, they have a winning record against Florida. Now, you can go back to Florida fans, and they're excited about their wins in the 50s and 60s, and I get that. That's fine. But since Bowden came around, they've been every bit the program that Florida had. I mean, it's been the same program essentially, right? Like they have the same level of success, but they've always done that with less resources, and they're continuing to do that now. You look at the TV contracts and all this talk about conference realignment and everything else, and Florida's donor base is so much bigger than Florida State's, and it's a bigger university, so they're literally they're growing their base as well. And so as far as the money with NIL, I think there are people who were always kind of there lurking in the shadows, but didn't necessarily, for whatever reason, feel like just giving to the Seminole boosters or giving to the organization was the most effective, best use of their money. And so they were just kind of sitting there. And so I think some of those people are very invested in football, very conscientious of wanting football to be good. And so they've done a really good job of stepping up to the plate and making that happen with the battle's end. I also think Dave Clawson, I put a video out on this today. Dave Clawson said, not only does Florida State have a top NIL program in the country, they're also smarter and more strategic than everybody else when they are, I don't know, lack of better words, buying players, getting Jordan Travis back, getting Jared Verse back, getting Trey Benson back, getting Johnny Wilson to not go to the draft. I think there's a lot of strategic happenings that have gone into it
You
as
got to
well. and they've
allocate
done a
your
great
salary
job.
cap properly. It's as simple as that. We have entered into a salary cap sport in the sense that there is a cap, a hard cap on how much boosters are willing to pay. And that cap will be directly influenced by the success on the field. So what you're seeing at Florida State right now is obvious. Mike Norvell has convinced a booster base, finally, for the first time in like 10 or 15 years, that, hey, this is something that we can get results out of if we invest in, because we finally got a coach that can actually coach some football. He is TJ Pittinger. He has been obviously our best guest here on the National Hour. He absolutely lit the airways up. TJ, tell the folks how they can find you, please, sir.
Yeah, double fries, no slaw. It's a little ode to Guthrie's, which my contact there was actually Big Bulldog. He was born and raised in Athens. So shout out to you guys. And you guys have a Guthrie's there. So double fries, no slaw everywhere, mostly on YouTube. So come check us out.
Hey, I appreciate you for joining us, TJ. We'll be talking soon, brother.
Thanks, buddy.
Hey, man, he absolutely cooked our ass.
Yeah, we were giving him some softballs, man. He was knocking them out of the park.
I mean,
Didn't stutter, didn't pause, nothing.
no, dude, didn't prepare him for nothing. Didn't give him no tips, no tricks, no trades.
He was good,
and he
man.
came in here and lit our ass up on our own show. Shouts out to TJ Pittinger. Let's go ahead and give him 3. Hey, I want to go ahead and give you guys 3. Let's give him 3. This has been by far our best hour or consecutive hours here on Nothing But Rants, our national hour. If you have found us this week, whether it be because of our takes on Twitter, whether it be because of our takes on Michigan, or whether it be because our boy TJ Pittinger just joined us, or whether it be because you came to watch RJ, Richard Johnson, join us. First of all, thanks to those guys for coming on here. Second of all, make sure you're subscribing. Make sure you're sticking around, because we are just getting started here on the Film Guy Network. For Brooks Austin, for my boy Jay Will and Curb, we'll see you next week.